When your own daughter orchestrates the lie, it doesn't sting immediately. It settles in slowly, like a chill beneath your collar. She invited me to dinner. Said it was just the two of us. Said she missed how things used to be. I wanted to believe her. That was my mistake. The restaurant was discreet. Reservation only, quiet corners, polished stemware. She chose the table. I chose not to question it until I saw who else walked in. My ex-wife. Perfectly timed, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, they embraced. It was never a reunion, it was a performance. But what neither of them knew was that I brought something too, a file, a voice, and the exact moment she buried herself years ago. Without realizing someone was recording, I didn't come for reconciliation, I came for closure. And a table was the perfect place to serve it. Like, subscribe. Share this with someone who's kept their receipts and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? It started with a text, just one line from my daughter, dinner, Friday night. Just us, I miss you, no emojis, no pleasantries. Just simple punctuation and an honesty that made me pause. We hadn't seen each other much lately. Not since the last time I questioned her mother's name appearing on a legal document she never should have been near. But that was months ago. And this message felt different. I stared at the phone longer than I should have. I told myself it was a good sign, that maybe she wanted to start rebuilding. Maybe the past wasn't holding her in place the way I thought it was, so I replied, I'd like that. Where? She picked the place. An upscale Italian spot tucked away on the far end of the city. Not our usual family haunt, not one of the post-divorce neutral zones, somewhere unfamiliar but elegant. Private, the kind of place where secrets sit in the air like candles on linen. Noticeable, but polite. I didn't ask why she chose it. I didn't ask who made the reservation. I should have. I arrived 10 minutes early. That's not a habit. That's a strategy. Early gives you time to observe. It gives you the chance to see who walks in before you're forced to smile at them. The hostess recognized my name when I gave it. She led me to a small private room, warm lighting, stone walls, heavy curtains over the windows. A single table set for 3. Not 2. 3. I didn't say a word, didn't blink, didn't walk out. I just sat down and waited. She walked in next. My daughter. Same coat she wore last winter. Same way of scanning the room like she was already bracing for something. She smiled when she saw me. Genuine? Maybe. I stood, hugged her. She seemed nervous. I asked, how's work? She said, busy, but good. And then she glanced at the door, just once. Small, quick, but I saw it. She didn't even try to delay the reveal. A few minutes later, the door opened again, this time slower. Almost cinematic. She walked in wearing red. My ex-wife, hair done the way she used to when she wanted control of a room. Eyes already calculating every expression on my face. A slight smile, not warm, not cold, just rehearsed. I didn't stand, she said. It's been a while, I nodded. No handshake, no embrace, just air. My daughter sat between us. I let them settle into conversation. Watched them pass the wine list like this was natural. Like we were the kind of people who dined together regularly. It was almost impressive, the performance of it all. She asked me questions. Surface level. About work I'd stepped back from. About golf, which I don't play. About people she never cared about when we were married. I answered, each one with deliberate clarity, not because I wanted to engage, but because I knew what was coming and I needed her to feel comfortable before it arrived. The waiter came, took our orders, left, and then the silence stretched. That's when my daughter tried. She folded her hands, leaned forward just slightly, and said, I think it's time we talked. Really talked? I met her eyes. I'm here, I said. Say what you came to say, she hesitated, and that's when her mother took over. She reached into her purse, pulled out a folder, placed it gently between the salt and the oil. I've had time to reflect, she said, and I think some of the decisions we made during the divorce weren't fair to the family. The word hung in the air like a bad chord. Family. She meant her. She meant money. She kept talking. about revisiting clauses, about miscommunications, about assets we jointly valued but had been hastily divided. She spoke like she was reading off a script from a consultant. My daughter nodded softly beside her. She wasn't part of this, not intellectually, not emotionally. She was just present, used. That's when I took out the flash drive. No flourish. No warning, I placed it on the table, next to her folder. "What's that?" she asked. "A voice you forgot was in the room," I said. Her eyes narrowed. She recognized it. It was from the final mediation, 12 years ago. She'd been recorded, legally of course. It was an open session. She had known it was documented, but she'd forgotten what she said that day. Or maybe she hoped I had. I watched her face change. The blood didn't drain. She didn't panic. That wasn't her style, but she stopped moving. Her hands, her breath, her performance, it all froze in place. My daughter looked between us, confused, a little afraid. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I simply said, "Play it," and I slid the drive. Across the table to her, that's where it began to unravel, not loudly, not in chaos, just in silence. The kind that lingers in rooms where trust used to live. She didn't reach for the drive. She looked at it, a small, ordinary object, like it had grown teeth, like touching it might confirm everything she had tried so hard to forget. My daughter asked, "What is this?" Still, I didn't raise my voice, didn't dramatize it, just told her the truth. "It's a recording," I said, "from the last mediation, the final one." Her brow furrowed. "You recorded Mom?" She knew, I replied. It was part of the session. And it was. That day, 12 years ago, both parties signed a waiver. Audio documentation for record keeping. Legal, routine. But what was captured was far from routine. Her mother spoke first. "It's ancient history," she said, tone flat. "We don't need to dig through the past." That's what she always did, but reduced everything to irrelevance when it no longer served her. But this wasn't about the past. It was about the foundation she was trying to rewrite beneath us. The waiter returned with the wine. Perfect timing. Or tragic. He poured the glasses, nodded, and left the room without a word. I reached into my coat pocket, retrieved a compact USB-C adapter, and plugged the drive into my phone. The audio loaded instantly. No password. No drama, just the file name. Mediation Room SHA-12B Final.wave. I set the phone on the table, volume up. No theatrics, and pressed play. The room filled with the grainy echo of 12 years ago. A mediator's voice, calm, controlled, professional. We're entering the final phase of property division. Each party has had opportunity to review and revise the terms. Then her voice, crisp, cold, detached. "I just want to make sure he doesn't touch the trust. I don't care what happens after. Once the accounts are split, I want full discretion." I glanced across the table. My ex-wife's jaw had tightened. She remembered that tone. The trust was never for him. "He'll be fine. He always lands on his feet. But the rest? I want enough to make the next 20 years mine." It kept going. The mediator asked a question about our daughter, and she answered, "She'll understand one day. Right now she just needs to see me win." That was the moment. The silence that followed on the tape was the same silence in the room now. My daughter's mouth parted. Barely. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at her mother. She looked at the phone, like it had betrayed her. Her mother reached out, touched her hand. A weak attempt at comfort, or maybe control. "I was angry," she said softly. "It was a difficult time. You have to understand." But the words rang hollow, because they weren't meant for understanding. They were meant for protection. Hers. I leaned back, let the moment settle. The weight didn't need help. It carried itself. My daughter said nothing. She just reached for her glass of wine, took a slow sip, and put it down with trembling fingers. "She said I'd understand," she finally whispered. I nodded once. "I think you do now." There was no need to argue. No point in rehashing years of damage. The audio had already done what 12 years of silence couldn't. It had pulled off the mask. My ex-wife tried to recover. She leaned forward, shifting into that performance mode she always reserved for fundraisers and depositions. This was supposed to be a beginning, she said. We were trying to come back together for her. But now even my daughter flinched at the word we. There was no we anymore. There was a woman who used her own child as bait, and a man who had waited over a decade to speak one sentence. So I did. Not to her, to my daughter. You deserve to know the whole story. Not the story someone filtered for you. She didn't respond, but she didn't walk out either. We sat in silence for a while. The food arrived. No one touched it. The phone was still on the table. Screen dimmed, but drive still attached, like a witness who wasn't ready to leave. Finally, my daughter stood. She reached for the folder her mother had brought, opened it slowly, and read the first few lines. Then, without a word, she closed it again and slid it back across the table. To her, not. To me, her mother watched it come toward her like it was radioactive, and maybe it was. Because inside that folder was a plan based on a lie, a strategy built on history she thought no one remembered. My daughter picked up her coat, paused, then looked at me softly. I'll call you tomorrow, and she walked out. Not fast, not emotional, just decisive. My ex-wife didn't stand. She didn't speak. She just sat there staring at the folder like it had betrayed her too. Eventually she looked up at me. You really held on to that all this time? No, I said. I let it go a long time. Ego. She didn't understand the answer, and that was the point. I unplugged the drive, ours slid. It back into my coat pocket, paid the bill without asking, and left her sitting there, alone, with the wine, the lies, and the version of herself she'd finally been forced to meet again, not in a mirror, but in playback. The walk home felt longer than usual, not because of the distance. I'd parked only a few blocks away, but because my mind moved slower than my feet, not heavy, just deliberate, like I wanted the night to unfold behind me with enough space to examine it. I passed closed shops, lit windows, people laughing in restaurants I wasn't invited into, and I didn't feel alone. I felt finished, not satisfied. Not vindicated, just finished. There's a strange sort of relief that comes after years of silence are finally broken. Not loud, not triumphant, but still final. When I got back to the apartment, I didn't take off my coat. I stood near the window, looked down at the city, let the glass cool my forehead. The flash drive sat on the counter behind me, not buzzing, not glowing, just waiting, as it had for over a decade. It wasn't leverage anymore. It wasn't even protection. It was just proof. And now that proof had done its job. The next morning, my daughter didn't call. I didn't expect her. Sometimes people don't process truth in real time. Sometimes it waits, like a weight settling through layers. But she did text. I listened to it again. Just that, nothing more. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, not even strategy. Some truths don't need commentary. They just need to land. It was 2 days before I heard from her again. She asked if she could come by. No dinner, no setup, no hidden guests, just coffee. I agreed. She arrived just after noon. No makeup, hair tied back, dressed like someone who'd been up late thinking. We didn't hug, but we didn't avoid each other either. She walked straight to the window, looked out the same way I had the night I left that dinner. I don't know what I expected, she said, but it wasn't that. I let the silence fill the space between us. She didn't cry. She didn't accuse. She just spoke like someone who'd been lied to and was still deciding how deep the lie went. She told me you'd cut her out of everything, that you'd hidden assets, that you manipulated the lawyers. I nodded once, and I believed her, she added. Still, I said nothing. She turned to me, but I didn't know. She was planning all that while we were still in the house. While we were still a family, that word again, family, the one people use when they're trying to stitch over rot. I poured her coffee. She took it without a word, sat down. The mug looked too large in her hands, or maybe she just felt smaller than she had before. She brought me into it because she thought I'd be the bridge. she said. The connection back to what she'd lost. She didn't lose it, I said quietly. She traded it. My daughter blinked slowly, processing. I think she's always been that way, she said. And I just didn't want to see it. I didn't correct her. That wasn't my job. She had to sit with that realization herself, the kind that doesn't arrive with fanfare, only with quiet shame. I thought inviting her that night would help, she continued. That maybe if she saw us all together again, something would shift. I didn't ask what she hoped would shift, because deep down, she didn't know either. We don't bring ghosts to dinner because we miss them. We bring them because we hope they've changed. They don't. She reached into her bag, pulled out the folder, the one her mother had brought to dinner, still unopened since that night. She slid it across the table. I read it, she said. It wasn't just a revision, it was a play. She was trying to take control of things she didn't own. I nodded, she added, and she wanted me to be the leverage. She stood, walked to the window again, long pause. Then, I don't want to be anyone's leverage anymore. Now I stood too, not close. Just parallel, then don't be, I said. She smiled faintly. But this one was real. After she left, I sat in my office, not the study, the legal one, where the walls are lined with decisions and regrets, bound in leather and dust. I opened a drawer, pulled out the envelope I'd written years ago, back when I first found out what she'd said during mediation. It was addressed to my daughter. Inside, one page, a single sentence. One day you'll ask me what happened, and when you do, I'll show you everything. I tore it in half. I didn't need it anymore. She'd already heard everything she needed. Not from me, from her, from them, from the voice. Her mother didn't know she'd left behind. There's a strange justice in silence. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't raise fists, but it lingers. It changes the temperature of a room. It alters the way someone looks at a person. They thought, they knew, my daughter will never look at her mother the same again. And that's not punishment. That's clarity. And clarity is permanent. It would have been easier if my daughter had gotten angry at me, at her mother, at herself, but she didn't. Instead, she grew quiet, not the kind of quiet that avoids conflict, but the kind that listens harder than it used to. That's what truth does, not immediately, but inevitably. It changes how people listen. We didn't speak again for 2 weeks, not out of avoidance, just processing. When betrayal doesn't come from a stranger, your brain has to rewire things. Every memory becomes suspect. Every moment gets replayed in slow motion. She was doing that. I could feel it, not because she told me, but because she didn't. That kind of distance is familiar. It's the space where people finally stop performing. Meanwhile, her mother did what she always does when control slips. She reappeared. Emails, 2 of them. Short, cold, no apology, just realignment. There's no reason this should divide the family. I hope you'll reconsider what that recording meant in context. Context, the last refuge of the manipulator. She wasn't defending what she said, only trying to reshape how it landed. I didn't reply. That wasn't silence. That was protection. For me. For my daughter. Even, oddly, for her. Because if she wanted to hang herself with her own rope, I wasn't going to stop her. What struck me most about that recording, even after all these years, was how little emotion she showed. Back then, she wasn't angry. She was surgical, measured, deliberate, calm, and yet, somehow people still believed she was the one who'd been left behind, that I was the cold one, the absent one, the overly logical one. I didn't correct them because truth doesn't need a campaign. It just needs time. My daughter came over one Saturday afternoon. No warning. Just knocked. I opened the door and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not sadness. Not guilt. Not confusion. Just maturity. The kind that arrives not in grand events, but in the slow erosion of illusion. Sat in the kitchen. She took her tea black. Now, another change I hadn't noticed. She didn't waste time. She's spinning it, she said. I raised an eyebrow. She told my aunt I manipulated you. That I brought the drive. That you planted it. I smiled faintly. She wasn't asking if it was true, she already knew. I told her to stop, she added. I said if she keeps talking like that, I'll release the full recording. I didn't expect that, but I also wasn't surprised. She set a folder on the table. This time, her folder, her handwriting. Her decisions. I've started restructuring the family trust, she said, removing her influence. Updating legal oversight. I opened it, reviewed the pages, clear, direct, legally sound. I looked up at her. You're certain? She nodded once. She took enough from you. I won't let her take from me, too. That line stayed with me, because it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. This wasn't about money. Not. Really, this was about clarity, about legacy, and who deserves to touch it. The interesting thing about people like my ex-wife is they rarely take things directly. They imply, they suggest, they corner, they let you offer things so they can later claim you gave them freely. But she didn't realize that the moment she used our daughter as a pawn, she'd overplayed. Not with me, with her, because children forgive a lot. Distance, divorce, disappointment, but manipulation, that breaks something deeper, something harder to repair. As I reviewed the documents, I saw something else tucked inside, a letter. Not for me, for her, unsent, unfolded. I handed it back. You sure? She nodded. It's not for her. It's for me. I respected that. Sometimes closure isn't something you send. It's something you say silently, by no longer needing to explain. The next time I saw her mother, it was accidental. A fundraiser, public, predictable. She was speaking to a cluster of people who still believed the old stories, still thought she was the graceful one, the strong one, the wronged one. I didn't interrupt. I didn't even greet her. But she saw me, and when she did, she smiled. Small, tight, then looked for my daughter, who wasn't standing beside her this time. She found her across the room, talking with a different group, different posture, different tone, independent. And that, more than any recording, any flash drive, any signature, that was the real shift. She wasn't hers anymore, not emotionally, not legally, not performatively. She belonged to herself, and that's what justice really looks like, people ask me sometimes. When they hear fragments of the story, why didn't you take her to court? Why not expose her publicly? Why wait 12 years? And my answer is always the same, because I wanted the right person to hear it at the right time. That person wasn't a judge. It wasn't the public. It wasn't even her. It was our daughter. And now she has. That night I reopened the drawer where I kept the drive. Still intact. Still labeled. Still whole. But it no longer held any weight. I placed it in an envelope, wrote one word on the front, "Done," and sealed it for good. I didn't attend the next family gathering, not because I was uninvited, but because I was no longer expected. There's a difference. Expectations carry weight. They carry assumptions. They carry obligation. I was free of all of it now, and so was she. The dinner went on without me, birthday candles, shared toasts, polite laughter, the kind of curated warmth that looks good in photos. But the center of gravity had changed. People noticed, and even if they didn't say it out loud, they felt it. She didn't have the same pull anymore. The stories didn't land the way they used to. The charm ran a little thinner. The attention wandered, and my daughter? She didn't sit beside her. She didn't correct her. She didn't defend her. She just watched. And in that watching, she reclaimed something. Not authority, not power, just clarity. And clarity, when earned, is stronger than either. Later that week, my daughter called. No script, no agenda, just space. I thought she'd apologize, she said. I waited, but she didn't, she continued. She acted like nothing happened, like the video didn't exist. I didn't respond right. Away, because I already knew her. Mother was never going to acknowledge it. To admit it would be to surrender control, something she spent her entire adult life refusing to do. She won't apologize, I said gently. Not because she doesn't know she was wrong, but because she knows she can't fix it. Silence. Then, I used to think that meant she was strong. I said nothing. She already knew better now. She came by the apartment that weekend. No pretext. Just presence. She brought a plant. A simple one. One of those low-light kinds you can't really kill. I figured you wouldn't want flowers, she said. She was right. I didn't want symbols. I wanted something that lasted. We sat by the window. Spring had begun to arrive, slowly but clearly. She asked questions she hadn't asked before. Not about the divorce, those details no longer mattered, but about the in-between, the years after. The moments she didn't see. What made you keep the recording? I didn't trust her not to rewrite the past. And what made you finally use it? You did, I said. When you invited me to dinner, she nodded, slowly. That was the moment I realized she was still playing the same game. We talked longer that day than we had in years, not about the past, about the now, about what she wanted to build, what she wanted to leave behind, what kind of person she wanted to be in rooms where her mother had once defined her. That's when I knew the real shift had taken place, not because she changed sides, but because she'd stopped standing between us altogether. She'd stepped out of the middle and chosen her own position. Weeks passed. I heard less from her mother. Eventually, I stopped hearing anything at all. No emails, no calls, no subtle threats disguised as reconnection. She faded, not publicly, not scandalously, just socially. That's how it happens to people who built their identity on control. Once they lose the leverage, the invitations slow down. The room doesn't turn when they enter. The air doesn't shift when they speak, and they notice. Trust me, they notice. There was one last thing I had to do. It wasn't revenge. It was alignment. I updated my legal documents. The will, the trust, the succession details. My daughter remained a primary beneficiary, but I added one clause, a letter, to be delivered alongside everything else, addressed only to her. It reads, "You were never the bridge, you were never the messenger. You were always the reason I held on, and the reason I finally let go. I didn't tell her about it. She'll read it when it matters, and she'll understand that her greatest inheritance wasn't financial. It was clarity." I still pass the restaurant. Sometimes. The one where she invited me, the one where her mother tried to perform a reunion she didn't deserve. It's still there, still quiet, still expensive, still unaware of what happened behind that curtain. That's the thing about places like that. They hold stories no one else sees. They remember, even when no one's looking. I don't keep the flash drive anymore. It served its purpose. It told the truth. Now it's gone, destroyed intentionally, because some truths, once delivered, don't need to be stored. They just need to be lived. And as for her mother, I don't know where she stands now. Not geographically. She emotionally. Imagine she still tells her version. Still edits history in rooms where no one knows better. Still builds narratives. Out of omission and charm. But fewer people are listening now, and none of them matter to me. What mattered most. Already heard everything she needed to hear, and she made her decision, not by yelling, not by choosing sides, but by stepping away from the script and writing her own. That's the kind of legacy I can live with. There's a moment, and you rarely realize it when it happens, when the center of your story shifts. For years, mine was survival, then it became restraint, then preparation. But now, it's stillness, not passivity, not surrender. Stillness, the kind that comes only after you've carried something long enough to finally set it down without it rolling away. Don't replay the dinner in my head. It's not that kind of memory. It's not cinematic. It's not something I wish had gone differently. It just was a pivot, the moment everything unspoken became undeniable. That's what truth does when it finally finds its voice. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand an audience. It simply lands and doesn't move. My daughter visits more now. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes she just reads beside me. Both of us sharing a space without needing to fill it. That's the reward for truth told well. Not applause, not validation. Presence, unforced, unedited, real. We don't talk about her mother anymore, not out of avoidance, out of completion. There's nothing left to dig through. No thread to pull. No new angles to consider. The story ended, and we both accepted how it did. That's not bitterness. That's peace, because some people leave without ever leaving the room, and some people leave, finally, when you stop expecting them to change. I walk more now. Morning walks. Same path, same bench halfway through. Same elderly man who feeds the birds near the fountain. The world feels softer than it used to, not because it's changed, because I have. My lens is different now. The weight I used to carry, explaining, defending, performing, is gone. What's left is clarity and clarity. I've found doesn't need to speak often. It just needs to hold. There was one last time I saw her, months after the dinner, unexpected, quiet, a gallery showing. Neutral ground. I didn't know she'd be there, and by the flicker in her eye, she hadn't expected me either. She smiled, reflexive, a performance that still worked on everyone else in the room, but not on me. She approached, said, "Hello." I nodded. She started to say something else, but paused, looked past me, at nothing in particular, and that's when I realized something subtle, but absolute. She was no longer talking to someone who still needed anything from her. That changes people. It deflates the performance. She said, "You look well." "I am," I replied. She nodded, waited, as if expecting a return compliment. I offered none. She turned, rejoined the room, and I watched her go, not with anger, not with ache, with distance. Burned clean and final. I never told my daughter about that moment. Not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't need to be part of the story she inherited. Not every chapter needs to be handed down. Some are meant to end in silence. The letter I included, with my will, remains untouched, not unread, just not needed yet. I suspect by the time she opens it, she'll already know every word by heart, because it wasn't written to explain anything. It was written to confirm what she already lived through. That she mattered, that the clarity she claimed came from something real. That letting go of someone who taught her how to lie wasn't betrayal. No, it was freedom. There are still people who ask about the divorce, not directly. They skirt around it. They mention that time, or the shift, or when things got quiet. Don't fill in the blanks, not because I'm withholding, because not everyone deserves the full story, just the people who earned it. And in the end, there was only one. I've stopped explaining why I kept the recording for so long. I've stopped defending why I played it. Because if you've ever been gaslit by someone who weaponized your silence, you already know it wasn't revenge. It was release. It wasn't performance. It was protection. It wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror. Some truths are better when whispered. This one, it needed to be played out loud. And it was. Not to the world, not to a courtroom, just to the one person who needed to hear it, not for justice, but for freedom. My daughter and I have become different people now, not in drastic ways, in subtle, steady, chosen ways. We don't say, "I'm proud of you," often. We just act like people who are. She built her own life, kept her name, learned how to hold a boundary without needing to raise her voice. She didn't inherit my habits, but she inherited my silence, the strong kind, and that's enough. There's no ribbon on this story, no big moment, no final confrontation, only clarity, and the quiet that finally followed it. If you've ever held your tongue because it wasn't the right time to speak, if you've ever waited for the right moment to show someone who they truly are, then you know. Some stories don't need explosions, just one quiet playback, one truth that doesn't flinch. If this resonated with you, take a second to like. It tells us the silence was worth it. Subscribe for more true confession stories like this. Quiet, cold, and clean. Share this with someone who knows what it's like to be erased and then remembered, and comment below. Have you ever kept something just in case the truth needed help one day? We read every comment, and we know some of you are still holding the drive.